Hi, Tina. Welcome to the Nurse Wellness Podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Wendy. I'm very happy to be here with you today. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Why don't we start off by you telling the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure, my pleasure. So I am a nurse who got into nursing through an untraditional path. I was actually a middle school educator for about 4 years. I taught math in Jersey City, New Jersey. And then after my mother-in-law was ill and hospitalized and then rehabilitated, since I had the summers off, I was the available family member to be there with her. And that time together with her in the hospital and then through her rehabilitation really kind of reawoke my passion for healthcare and kind of combined both, my love of learning and teaching with science. And so I went back to school and became a nurse. And here we are 16 years later, although I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is you're a nurse, so you can do and be anything, right? That's the
That
beauty
is
of
the truth.
the profession.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just talking to some UConn students today, and I was telling them the same thing. I said, you picked one of the best careers on the planet, to be a nurse.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. We
so how
actually
did
have we have central students that come on site as well here. And that was the same conversation I was having with them today about, there's an open world to you for how you want to evolve as a nurse, as a professional nurse. And it's continuing to evolve, like the nurse informatics, the health equity. I mean, that for me, I think that's where we're going to go next, having nursing really at the forefront of health equity. So, and that's where I'm passionate. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how did you start your nursing journey? You went back to school, you graduated, and then what?
Yeah. So I had to do some of the prereqs because my first undergraduate degree didn't have all the sciences. So I did other prereqs. I actually went to a couple of the community colleges here in Connecticut, Capital and Tunxis, and then did UConn's accelerated 1-year program. At that point, I could have stayed for the second year to get my master's. But I was like, I had been in school for 2 years, was a newlywed. I wanted to, actually bring some income back into the family, but also wanted experience. So I went into work, and I was actually very fortunate to go right into an operating room in a community hospital here in Connecticut. And, was there in that setting for about 4 years and just really love the technical aspect of it. Plus the individualization where thankfully I only had a 1-to-1 ratio versus in med surg where you don't always have, the 4-to-1 or 6-to-1, sometimes it's more than that. So I really love kind of being there with the anatomy, really kind of helping with the instrumentation and as well as all the other technology that's now in the operating rooms and really coordinating with ambulatory and recovery nursing and transition our patients through their care.
Yeah, so that's very interesting because, in nursing school, everyone's always like, oh, you have to do med surg and you went into the OR. So for, our aspiring nurses listening, what's your take in retrospect now looking back? Do you think med surg was necessary or was it okay to go into a specialty such as the OR right out of school?
Yeah. I definitely, again, I think it depends on your learning style and your level of comfort. I definitely am never afraid to jump feet first into the unknown. So because of that, I was very comfortable going straight into the OR. What was challenging for me was at that time, unfortunately, there was no designated educator, nor did the organization have the ARN Peri-Op 101 training program. So I, again, had to just jump in and kind of figure it out with my preceptor and my nurse manager of how I was going to be trained. Fortunately, after that, and with the ongoing, challenges with nursing and filling positions, especially in some of the specialty positions, there's a lot of programs now available that they are thankfully hiring new grads into some residency programs for some of these specialties. So definitely, again, if that's of your interest, ensuring that you have the right support and systems in place that can help you navigate that. But I wouldn't change my experience at all. I really am grateful for how I've been able to progress.
Yes, and you mentioned residency programs. Can you speak a little more about that, just in case people don't really know what that is?
Absolutely. And it's something I think it's very innovative, but also necessary. But basically, as a new grad, you apply to be part of a nurse residency program where it's you and a cohort of other new grads. They get assigned, to a unit, have a preceptor, but then you also have time off the unit to work with educators directly on certain themes, certain skills. And it's kind of that ongoing professional development that is really focused and tailored to kind of the group's assessments and the group's baseline assessment and needs to really ensure that at the end of your residency program, you are really, fully capable of being an independent nurse on the floors.
Yeah, I was actually part of Middlesex residency program, and I thought it was the best thing.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of like, it's like a bridge between like school and being thrown into the workforce. So that, and I really love Middlesex. It's a magnet hospital. So yeah, it was a really, really good experience.
Yeah.
So I know, well, I want you to tell them what you do now and how you moved from bedside to boss.
I like that. I like that. Actually, one of my direct reports is always calling me boss lady. So again, it's taken me probably 12 years to evolve to this position. But I, as an OR nurse, was really always passionate about safety and ensuring that my internal learner is always looking to do things better. So I was working with quality and doing some process improvement projects at the time when the skip measures came out. They needed some frontline nurses to really kind of examine the measures and to provide feedback as to where are opportunities and where are we doing okay. So again, me being the eager learner I am, was always volunteering for those type of situations. That led me to then transition into a performance improvement specialist position, which at the time really just worked better for my work-life balance. As an OR nurse and then as the OR manager, I had to do call. And particularly if there was call outs, I would have to be included in the rotation to cover. So when I had two little infants with a husband who traveled a lot for work with no additional family support, it was difficult trying to manage call. Like there were times where I would sleep over at the time with just one infant, a friend's house, because I was on call. And if I got called in, thankfully she would stay with my child and then take him into daycare the next morning while I was still in the case. So that was not a sustainable model for us. So that's why I was really grateful for the opportunity for the administrative side of nursing. But then I was still able to kind of learn other specialties because then I was working with the entire hospital nursing staff and then eventually the system because the hospital had a nursing home. They had some outpatient settings as well as ambulance EMS. So I eventually, again, very curious and very eager, got involved in quality and regulatory. And so then I was promoted to a regulatory manager. And then kind of just really followed my heart and passion of what's best again for me for continued growth, but then also for that kind of work-life balance and also that hard decision of, yeah, I'm not liking how things are right now. And at the end of the day, I need to be happy with who I'm looking at in the mirror and know that I'm going to sleep doing the right thing and working with a team that's committed to that. So I transitioned to a couple different other opportunities. And again, just really, really can't stress enough, don't hesitate to look at those opportunities where you feel like you're not qualified because you are, and never not apply because you don't feel like you hit every one of those job requirements. You do. So just apply. It does not hurt to apply. I have my nursing portfolio. It's this big binder that I bring in everywhere with me of all my accomplishments. And that's usually a game changer. When I come into an interview with that portfolio, they're like, wow, this is unique. This is different. Not everybody brings that in. And a lot of times they're asking for copies or they want to share it with other team members. So kind of just, again, bringing that proactiveness and being, your best cheerleader, like you are your best advocate. And so just always speaking up for yourself is how I've been able to continue to grow. And then in my most recent role, I am the Vice President of Nursing for Wheeler Clinic. It's a federally qualified health center here in Connecticut with 5 primary care locations. But when I started with the organization back in July of 2019, I was the senior director of quality and infection control. So again, along my journey of kind of the administrative side of it, and me being the eternal learner I am, I'm certified in infection control, I'm certified in patient safety, I'm certified in healthcare risk management. So at the time, the role was perfect. It was giving me a reprieve from the big healthcare system that I was at prior, and really that, no, I can't sustain 80 hours a work week life anymore. Plus it gave me something that had been missing, which was that integrated care with mental health and medical and nursing, and primary care is where I'm at now focusing on. But the fact that I get to collaborate with behavioral health and psychiatric professionals for our population, that was just like, it's nirvana for me. I just love it. And so there was a change in the organization leadership, and they had an evaluation of knowing that the leadership at the time wasn't functional. There was just one basically leader over 5 sites, and nobody could be successful in running 5 different basically big units, right? And by themselves. So there was this realization there needed to be a different structure. And thankfully they created this role and I was promoted into it. And that was right before the pandemic. But I've been in this role ever since March of 2020.
That is amazing. And one constant thing that I hear is that you are hungry for knowledge, hungry for more. And you use everything as a stepping stone. And the whole innovation that you mentioned, I think that is so important as a nurse is to, yeah, you meet things one way, but when you leave, it should never be the same because we are innovative. And that's why they stress the critical thinking piece of what we do. And the portfolio is a genius nugget. I think for experienced and aspiring nurses, you should definitely keep some sort of portfolio. I was thinking about like your brand, right? That's like your brand. You have your brand in that book, and this is what differentiates you because no one's really doing that. So I love that. I love that. I love that suggestion. And as the VP, do you hire?
I do. Yeah.
So what do you look for in a candidate when they're sitting across your desk?
And, you hear people say it's not about, the experience is more about kind of the fit, and knowing that you're going to have a team player. And that is definitely what I look for. I look for somebody who has the same drive and commitment as me, who has that same thirst for wanting to do more, that same hunger, but who's also able to understand that there's opportunities, both, for us as individuals, but then also as a team. And I'm always transparent in my interviews. I let them know we have problems, like we have opportunities. This is not, the grass is green on this side. But the difference is that we're a much more unified team now. There's definitely open communication, right? Prior to me coming into this role, people were afraid to speak up. So thankfully with our collective leadership, as well as I feel with my leadership and then my direct reports, my nursing supervisors, we've definitely kind of created that environment where we want everybody to feel safe for speaking up. And so I definitely want to ensure that people are going to be able to be comfortable to speak up, who are going to be able to contribute their recommendations, and who are really, committed to our population and our mission. Because Wheeler as a FQHC, and because of the whole mental health and primary health, it's a unique population we serve. So I really need that passion for our population as well. So those are kind of the big things I look for.
Awesome. And what about people knowing about your organization? We have a lot of nurses who are graduating soon. What are some nuggets? Like if they are, going for an interview at an institution like yours, what are some expectations that you have about, knowing about the organization, your mission?
Yeah, definitely do your homework, right? And nowadays everything's on LinkedIn. So do your research, look at that company webpage, look at some of their press releases, look at people's LinkedIn, see where they've been, see what some of their interests are, see what some of their posts are, right? Because these are people, we're people. You want to connect with us to make us, for you to stand out, for us to feel like that warm and fuzzy relationship that we can develop with you. I definitely always am very happy to see when applicants come with questions. You know, come ask me some good questions. Come ask me some hard questions, right? And then also my little kind of gold star is when they ask me what I want from them if they were to be the successful candidate. You know, so I always love it. And it's very rare that you get people to ask that question. But when they say, so what is it that you want from me in the immediate short term and then, you know, long term? And I'm like, oh yeah, this is my candidate. We're speaking my language. We're on the same wavelength. This is going to be a good fit.
That is awesome. I love that. And those are some great nuggets. So I hope anyone who's listening, whether you're a new nurse or experienced nurse, you need to be writing this down. So I do want to hit on the pandemic. Like, you started your role in 2019, and then of course, COVID hit 2020. How has that experience been for you as a leader, like just personally, professionally, and then leading, you know, your direct reports?
Yeah. Professionally, again, like everybody else, we were building the plane as we were trying to fly it. You know, thankfully our organization started with some of our meetings back in January of 2020. So as stirrings were coming out in December and early January, we started doing some of our pandemic response meetings, and then we just went into kind of response mode February. And thankfully our organization is very nimble so that we were able to convert to telehealth over a weekend. And I'm very proud of the fact that we didn't furlough or lay off anybody during the, you know, the height of that first wave. And that we were able to, you know, actually open up 2 new sites over the last 2 years during the pandemic. So professionally, it was really about collaborating with leadership, but more importantly with the front line, you know, understanding what their fears were, what their concerns were, what they needed in terms of information, education, resources to provide them with the support necessary to take care of our patients and clients. And I was in scrubs the whole time. I was there elbow to elbow with everybody. You know, when we started our COVID testing, I was the first COVID tester. So I was out there. And then once, you know, I kind of worked out all the protocol and documentation nuances, then we trained everybody else, and then it became a shared responsibility. So I thankfully have been very lucky to be very hands-on with my team and work with them collaboratively. So, and I think that's really helped us. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we did win the Connecticut Nursing Association Excellence of Team Award for 2021.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And again, that's just a great reflection of the commitment, the collaboration, the teamwork that we had, first to each other as team members, but then of course to our communities. Personally, we are still recovering from COVID. I'm sure as many of us are. You know, I really was working, you know, thankfully primary care, we're only open 8 to 6. So it's not 24/7 like those of you who are in acute care or long term. But you know, I was out at 7, and sometimes I didn't come home until 7. So it was long days. Definitely, you know, sprayed myself down, changed the clothes in the garage, went straight to the shower until we knew more information to protect the family. I'm very fortunate that my husband is my rock, my foundation. He was at home with the 3 kids for that first initial lockdown, you know, doing projects and taking them out, keeping them entertained. And then as remote schooling started, he was the one at home, you know, helping them navigate all that, because I couldn't be, I had to be out. And then when I came home, thankfully, you know, I didn't have to worry about dinner or the other stuff because that was taken care of. So that really helped. But with that, you know, having 3 kids, 2 of them who are teenagers, which is a difficult time in and of itself, but add the isolation, from the pandemic, we've had some struggles, and now thankfully many of us are in therapy. I am using my EAP benefit from work. My husband and I are going through our couples therapy. My kids are in their therapy, and there should be no fear or stigma associated with that. It's there for a reason. Life is hard, work is hard, our relationships are hard. So you need to have that support and resources to help you ensure that you're okay first and foremost, so that then you can take care of, your family, and then, do your work. So thankfully, this last year has been better. And, we're just really now looking forward to moving forward, starting to plan vacations again, looking forward to the summer, to having family come up again. And just continue to move on. My oldest is going to be in the Sweet 15. My daughter is graduating 8th grade. My little one is excelling in 1st grade. So, it's just the resiliency of the family and the kids is what also helps keep me going.
That's amazing. I want to first say thank you for your transparency, and thank you for your leadership. I mean, that servant leadership was just exemplified in the example you gave. And, just kind of going back, you said, your people, that your nurse managers, the connection is so important. So when times of crisis hit, you still move as a team.
Right.
Which I really, really love that. I love that. And you're right, the whole stigma with mental illness, we definitely need to normalize that conversation in nursing, in healthcare, and encourage each other to use our EAP, right? Get a counselor, get a psychologist, psychiatrist, or whomever. Mental health is just as important as your physical health. And I know you're passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
So I would love to hear about how you talk about that in your professional realm, and what advice would you have for new nurses entering the field? Because, DE&I, racism are all things that we're talking about. The ANA just, released their survey results, which we talked about on this podcast, but I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And actually for the DEI work, I also love to expand it to justice and belonging as well. Those are the other two components of it that I feel that aren't always mentioned or included in that conversation. I'm very fortunate that Wheeler was very responsive, after George Floyd's murder. We met with our CEO, our diversity and inclusion team met with our CEO, and I remember this to this day. We met on a Friday morning around 9:30, and she, was like, what do I need to do? How are you? What do you need? And what do I need to do? And so I made the recommendation. I was like, we need a diversity officer. We need that position in the organization that's going to drive it, to hold the organization accountable, to hold the executive leadership, the board, the staff, hold our mission, our strategic plan accountable, to ensuring that we're always talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging. And Wendy, by 1:30, the position was approved by our board and posted online.
That gave me chills. That is, wow.
Exactly. Talk about responsiveness. That for me speaks volumes. And since that was in around the summertime, we had our diversity officer hired in September of 2020, and it's just been full speed ahead since. Yeah, we're working on our health equity plan. We've always had our class plan, but now we're really working on our health equity plan. We are ensuring that our data collection is accurate, because it's fundamental 101, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't have good data, you can't do any analysis or improvements. So that is where we're starting at. We've started some trainings last year, and we're continuing them this year. We have diversity, equity, inclusion basically embedded into every kind of strategic goal, always ensuring that it's part of that lens. And thankfully just continuing to advocate for those that don't have a voice, who aren't allowed to use their voice, or who aren't invited into the room. That's always where I'm asking. I was like, wait, before we have this conversation, who's supposed to be here that's not, and why aren't they? And let's get them in here. And then also taking it back of like, all right, this is what we've talked about, but we need to get it back to everybody to ensure that they have time to process and to provide their input.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. I mean, Willa Clinic hit the nail right on the head. I mean, that's awesome. And I have a two-part question for you. So one is, what advice would you give to a nurse leader or a healthcare leader who feels a little uncomfortable talking about diversity, equity, inclusion? And what advice would you give to an aspiring nurse who's going in for an interview in terms of asking about that, the importance of asking about, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion, and, you know, how it aligns with their mission and vision?
Yeah. I would say for the first part, definitely would depend on who you are, right? So as a person of color, it's going to have a different kind of impact than if you're an ally or not a person of color. So definitely understanding kind of where your background is, what your lens is, but also to know, you know, if you are white, you have a privilege. You have, you know, I feel a responsibility to be speaking up and to being that ally to help promote diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging within your organization, and not to, you know, have that sidebar conversation after the meeting. Oh, that was really uncomfortable. Oh, I wish that didn't happen. No, 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 no. Speak up in that meeting. That's where we need you to speak up. And then as a person of color, the work is hard. It is hard. You know, your psychological safety is of paramount. You know, it is not your responsibility to go and save the organization from being racist. It is not. So the organization has to really have that commitment to recognize its opportunities, its vulnerabilities, where it needs to have support. And if you're not getting that within your org, find your network where you are. There's a number of professional organizations that are out there. There's the Hispanic Nursing Association, the Black Nursing Association. There's chapters locally in Connecticut, as well as nationally. LinkedIn, you know, there's a ton of groups out there. There's this really powerful group, Overdue Reckoning, by Dr. Canty from University of St. Joseph, who is just powerful. You know, there's definitely support out there for you if you are not getting that support in your organization now. You are not alone. There are definitely nurses out there doing the fight who are going to be there to help support you. And then as a candidate, definitely, it's one of my priority questions that I ask. You know, I always look to see if there's anything in the strategic goals about diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, belonging. They'll get bonus points if there's actually demographics that they publish with the board, there's like leadership. I'm still waiting to see if people start publishing salaries and all that stuff, but that's something that's coming. But definitely asking in the interview, you know, what's the organizational goals on diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging, and what are the opportunities? You know, is there a diversity officer? Is there a diversity team or a council? You know, as if I were to become an employee, what opportunities would I have to participate in those activities and collectively support the organization, but also for my specific role? Like, I definitely am looking for roles that I know I'm going to have, you know, a hand in the game for this priority.
Yes, I think it's so important nowadays. And you know, it's kind of, we should have been talking about it a long time ago, because I'm just thinking about, you know, for us as healthcare professionals being, you know, minorities, but what about the patients? I mean, we are caring for everyone, Black, white, purple, orange, green. So diversity and inclusion should not be an uncomfortable conversation, because if you have biases, you need to address those before you walk into any healthcare institution or take care of any patient. So it shouldn't be, I don't want to say it shouldn't be uncomfortable, but that's the lens. You're there to take care of society, and society is a melting pot. So it's something that we need to talk about. And I think even for leaders, really addressing their biases. And, you know, if they are racist, right, let's talk about, let's unpack it a little bit. But it's something that's magnified now. And I think the pandemic really put a magnifying glass on, you know, racism, but for me personally, working, it was a big thing with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all that. And for me, I'm like, I kind of grew up with that. Like, I grew up seeing police officers with their knees on people's neck, their back, and roughing them up. And so for me, it was like, and everybody was like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay, because this isn't new. This is not, you know what I mean? Right. It's not. So I think it's something that we need to continue to talk about, and really bring to light and not let it die. And with everything going on with diversity officers and people having initiatives, we have to talk about sustainability, right, of these things. And I think we're really good at addressing something in a webinar or a series or something like that, but we have to really have sustainable solutions when it comes to that.
Yeah, it needs to be embedded into every aspect of organization's operations. It can't just be a flavor of the month, or something that we just, oh yep, diversity officer, check, and nothing else. They need to have a budget. They need to have objectives. They need to have reports that go up to the board. Because again, overall, it's the board of directors that really have to ensure that the organization is being held responsible for what it's saying it's doing. And just in terms of health equity on a more larger scale, I mean, social determinants of health, the fact that we spend so much money on healthcare, right? How much of our GDP goes to healthcare, and the actual care we get in hospitals and doctors' offices only equals to 20% of our health outcomes. The other 80% is all about our social determinants of health, but there's not enough funding for that. So just from a business model, I'm like, economists, like, can you please just like get it out there already? Like, it's not a good business model. We're putting in all that, we're wasting all this money when we're not addressing the root causes. We're not going upstream to find the source and fix it, but then we want different outcomes. That's poor business. Like, forget from a fundamental human right, like that's a given, right? Like, but not everybody agrees with human rights, right?
Well, I'm saying right, but it feels so wrong.
But then take it to the money, right? Because then, okay, yeah, business model and return on investment, right? And like, yeah, you're spending all this money and you're only getting a 20% return on your investment for health outcomes.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole episode on that. So we will definitely have to bring you back. We'll have to bring you back to talk about that. So I want to take you through a rapid fire, but I want you to tell people how they can get in contact with you, and if you have any last words for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. My information is on LinkedIn. So again, please go on LinkedIn. So you can send me a message there, connect there. I love to meet people there. So feel free to visit me there. And just again, be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Things take time. And that was something that one of my dear first mentors taught me. And time stands for things I must earn. So, be patient. There's a lot of work to be done. And you're not going to do it by yourself. You're going to do it with a collaborative, with a team. But find your fire and keep it burning.
Ooh, I love that. Things I must earn. Oh, I have to use that one. I love that one.
That was my mentor from when I was in the OR, Greg Brown. That's what he taught me.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, let's take you through a quick rapid fire. So let me know the first thing that comes to your mind to answer the question or finish the statement. So wellness means?
Self-care.
I know I'm stressed when?
I have short patience. When I'm snappy.
My go-to stress management solution is?
Laughter.
Something people get wrong about me is?
I don't know. I don't really care what people think about me. Whatever, you get what you get. And there's days where I'm on point. There's days where I'm less on point, but it's still me. So that one, yeah.
Well, that reduces stress. If you can scratch that off your list, right? You just operate. Yes, I love that. I love that. And my last question for you is, one thing I learned about myself during this pandemic is?
I can do hard things.
Awesome. Well, Tina, thank you so much for being here with us. I really enjoyed our discussion, and I hope you come back.
It was a pleasure, Wendy. I love to. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.